Hi, I'm Derryl DePriest, and I'm excited to announce Star Wars The Vintage Collection Archive. Many of you know me from my time at Hasbro, where for many years I led the Star Wars brand team. Now I'm teaming up with fellow collectors Rich Alott and Dave Myatt to bring you an unprecedented look at one of Hasbro's most beloved Star Wars action figure lines, the Vintage Collection. This is a powerful collaboration between three fans who have a lifelong passion for Star Wars figures. Dave has been content manager and lead photographer for Rebel Scum for many years, and Rich is a longtime fan with a very strong design sense. It's a perfect time to celebrate the Vintage Collection. The HasLab Jabba's Sail Barge project, coupled with the return of the line in 2018, has reinvigorated the 3 3/4 fan base. And our goal is to give longtime fans an inside look at the making of the Vintage Collection, while also giving newer collectors a primer on the entire line.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's Fangirl Friday. Happy Fangirl Friday, everybody. This is Anita Castellard, and this is Fangirl Friday Live, where every week we unpack the business behind the fandom. We are a licensing agency, so we do work in the industry, but we also like to highlight great folks and ideas and concepts and projects that are behind the fandom, behind the business of it. And so what I want to do is actually bring in my really good friend, Derryl DePriest. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Great to talk to you again, Anita.
Good to talk to you too. Welcome, welcome. So, Derryl and I have known each other for quite some time. In fact, I will give you a sneak peek. Derryl actually hired me for the crazy job called marketing at Hasbro. And we worked on Star Wars for quite some time together. So Derryl, welcome to the live stream. And I'm really happy that you're here. We can talk some more, talk about fandom. But, I really want to talk about you and highlight, your career path and the impact you've had in the industry.
Well, thanks much. I'm glad to be here. I do have a very unusual career path, but it's something that I think, people can learn from, because it's basically, I had a major, course correction based on my passion. I kind of found my passion, however people do that at whatever point in life. And that combined with some amazing career advice kind of led me to have the career I've had. So, I could tell you as much or as little as you want to hear about that.
Well, we definitely want to hear some of it. It's hard to find your path sometimes, especially for, some of the young folks nowadays, right? Where there's so many options and there's so many things, but then there's also so many unknowns, such as, how did we get, I get that question a lot. How did you get the job that you got? How did you get where you were, and how did you make a real career path out of fandom, like being a fan of stuff? So let's start with you. Let's start with your journey and career in fandom, but let's start with your career, your passions first. Like, what were some of your fandoms growing up?
Sure. Growing up, my kind of childhood was bracketed by two major events. One, getting my first G.I. Joe, and this is, when I say G.I. Joe, it's the original 12-inch G.I. Joe. My G.I. Joe was the one with fuzzy hair in the 1970s.
The big beard.
Yeah, and the beard. Yeah, exactly. The lifelike hair and the Kung Fu grip, right? Who could, Kung Fu grip was awesome. That was my first G.I. Joe. I think I got it. Someone handed me down a used one. I think it was my cousin. And I was bit. This was the toy for me. It was, in many ways, I still think it was one of the greatest toys ever imagined, because G.I. Joe then didn't have a story. It didn't have much of a story. There was this adventure team kind of very loose story, but you created your own storytelling. And boy, that was the toy for me. So my childhood started with G.I. Joe, and then my childhood play with toys kind of ended with Star Wars. So, when Star Wars came out, I was 12 and I was still playing with toys. That's back when, older kids still played with toys.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of going into the sunset with my toys with Star Wars, thinking it's time to put them away. So I put them away, very carefully, and all their weapons and stuff like that. And, but I still talked about it on the playground with kids, even though I wasn't as active. So my childhood really bracketed the 70s, 80s, and in there were comic books and trading cards and all the things, and Legos back then. These are all the things that influence what I do nowadays. So my love and affinity for pop culture is firmly rooted in what I had as a kid, but it's branched out in many ways from that.
Yeah. So, when you say, your love affair, well, I'm rephrasing your words, but your love affair with toys and your entree into the toy industry started kind of with G.I. Joe, but that kind of informed your professional career as well, right? That was informing your love affair with toys, but it also informed your professional career, didn't it?
It did. And this is the funny thing. So growing up, I didn't know you could have a career in toys. I really never thought about like who makes the toys. I was just a happy consumer. Whereas I was also into comic books, and I knew that comic books, is something that you could go into. You could write comic books, or you could do art. So I thought, maybe I'll write comic books someday. But I really didn't think about the toy piece. But much later, after I was going to college, my first career path was to be a scientist. So I went to graduate school, and I was working on a doctorate in neuroscience, brain research, because I was and still am very passionate about science. But I was into this program, and at the same time, I got bitten by the collecting bug. I started to buy G.I. Joes, on the secondary market, and they had value then, and I was collecting actively, and I said, wow, they're still making G.I. Joe at Hasbro, although a different form. And I thought, boy, wouldn't that be fun? I was getting kind of disillusioned with the idea of being an academic researcher. Mm-hmm. So I eventually didn't finish my PhD. So my master's is in neuroscience. But while I was in that program, I really set my sights on how can I do something I fundamentally love? And kind of the bolt out of the blue was one day I sent Hasbro a bunch of pictures of dioramas I was making, with G.I. Joes. They were really cool. And I sent them, and I said, I'm a huge fan. How can I work for you?
Yeah.
Is it possible to get a job? And believe it or not, as many letters like that Hasbro has gotten over the years, actually, somebody took the time to call me back, which is the most amazing thing. It was Vinny DeLiva, who had a great career at Hasbro, and now he's the head of Tomy, in the U.S. So he's still in the industry, but he actually took the time. He called me. We talked for like half an hour. And this is me. I'm in grad school for science. I have no marketable business skills or anything like that. But we talked, and he walked me through like a series of questions, and then he kind of said, at the end of it, he said, you should consider marketing. He said, based on everything that we've talked about, like the way you think about toys and lines and complete play and, inspiring imagination, you should think about marketing. He said, I can't hire you. You have no skills. I don't want to,
right.
And there's no positions available now, but just go get experience. It doesn't matter what you do. Just go get marketing experience. And then you'll find your way, and then who knows what the future holds.
So how'd you get that experience?
So I got very lucky. Someone took a chance on me. I moved to California, and I applied to video game companies. There's a lot of video games out there. It's a nice adjacency to the toy industry.
Right.
And somebody, Mary Fujihara at Atari Games, took a chance on me. She said, you've got a spark. I like what I see. Come on in. And the rest was history. So she started with me, and from there I worked on arcade games, and then basically stayed with Atari through the Midway acquisition. Midway bought Atari.
Okay, yeah.
Stayed with them for 8 years, and then an opportunity came up at Hasbro, and I was able to get the job.
So you're over here working at Atari, but your eye is over there at Hasbro.
Exactly. Guilty as charged. I really wanted to work for Hasbro because they had the brands that I thought, were the most, important brands to me that I could make a contribution to to them. And they had acquired Kenner, who had Star Wars. So I figured all these brands were under the same house. But so my career track, back to your original point, it's like at some point we become aware of these things. But yeah. So that's one, is just finding out what the opportunities are. And I think today people do have a better chance at that, because I think people can research things on the internet, certainly in video games, people know you can be professional video game players and, esports players. And so there are more opportunities in fandom than ever before. But marketing's a weird one. Like, people, in high school don't go, I want to be a marketer. At least, I don't think they do. Maybe now they do. But
no, maybe. But I always hear, I want to be in business, or I want to be a lawyer.
Exactly.
Or I want to be a doctor, and those are all very good career paths. Don't get me wrong, but you can be a lawyer within the toy industry or within the video game industry or within, entertainment and production and film and all of that. Those are lots of different lawyers, and all of those have intellectual property protection needs. So everybody needs a lawyer.
That's right. So and people maybe don't understand what marketing is. So marketing on its simplest level is taking what could be a commoditized thing, right, and packaging it, branding it, making someone feel special that they're buying it, and then surrounding that with tools to really make people aware of it and sell it. And the beauty of toy marketing, it's such a fashion-driven industry. So when we worked together, we were basically planning that the current product line we had, let's say the first Clone Wars line in 2010, was going to be obsolete. Next year, we had to have an entire new line. Everything had to be new. So that's the beauty of toy marketing, is you're planning for the future. You're trying to obsolete what you're doing today with hopefully even better stuff and more exciting things and the latest technology. So it's really fun. I found it always fun to be creating, to be constantly creating and coming up with the next thing. So that's the essence of marketing. And if it wasn't for the amazing time that Vinny DeLiva took with me to kind of mentor me in a way, for the time he did, I wouldn't have had that pivot that I did. So I've always kind of paid that forward. So I love to mentor folks at Hasbro and wherever. A lot of people, because of the luck I've had in being able to carve out a career based on my passion, I've had so many people come up to me and say, how can I do what you do? And so I give them great advice. A lot of them are designers, and I say, go get industrial design experience. For that, nothing speaks to your commitment to being a designer like, going to actually design things that you're not necessarily passionate about, but you learn the tools that are going to get you to the to the right place. And the same thing in marketing. But I will caveat it though. So as passionate as you may be about a subject, you really have to have self-awareness. This is the other thing. Self-awareness of your own skills, the ability to recognize what you need to work on and constantly challenge yourself and be better, but also an ability to understand what other people think of you and how they perceive you. Now, I've collected toys pretty much my whole life and a whole bunch of other stuff. I generally don't care what people think about me. But I'm going to do what I do and be proud of it, loud and proud. That's right. But you do have to be careful in a corporate culture. You don't want to be pigeonholed. For instance, I had people at Hasbro come up to me and as many amazing kid-focused products we did, Anita, lightsaber innovation and helmets and Darth Vaders and role play toys and kid-targeted products, people would still come and say, you're a collector. You're a wolf in sheep's clothing. I know that. You're just a collector. Everything you do is collector. I said, that couldn't be further from the truth. I can't survive if I'm not thinking in a broader sense about the business holistically, not just what I want to do.
Right.
And so you have to be careful. You have to, make sure that you're navigating your career in a way that opens up the biggest opportunities for the company you're at, rather than just narrowly focusing on what you want to do, because that will get you, kind of shoveled off in the corner, and ultimately it'll be a very unsatisfying experience. So it's great to follow your passion, but you need to have awareness, objectivity, and constantly search for growth as well.
And real skills. It takes preparation. It's great to go into a career path and say, oh, I love this. I'm so knowledgeable about this subject matter, this brand, this particular medium. But if you don't have the proper tools, the proper education or proper preparement or the dedication or the discipline to also learn things that are outside of your comfort zone and then apply them back into what your real job is, then you're, like you said, you're going to get a little bit limited in your career pathing and also your own level of achievement, because sometimes you hit a wall and then you don't know why you're hitting that wall, right? Because you haven't properly prepared, or you're not looking to the next thing. You're not looking past what you also, like you said, your own passion or what you want to do, but then what's right for the business. And that's where this live stream kind of comes into play as well. It's like, there's a lot of us who are geeky nerds, whatever it is that we want to do, but yet we also have to turn that on and off to be able to do the business. Because not everybody's like us or thinks like our particular way. And so we have to be kind of anticipating and knowing who our consumer base is, who's going to purchase this thing, and then that's where the storytelling comes in, where the marketing comes in, where the legalities and the design and, all the interpretive pieces that come together to make one figure.
That's so funny, because you're bringing back all those groups that we had to interact with on a daily basis, or you did.
Yes, I did.
On a daily basis. Earlier in my career, I had to do that as well.
Yeah.
And it does take so much work, and safety, Q&A, and engineering. But
I can build a master pack like nobody's business now, Derryl. Thank you. I know how to ration 2 Vaders, 1 Obi-Wan.
There's this. I love those days. That's the beauty.
That's where the mentorship came in too, though, because you saw, okay, there's a person here. They knew how to do so much. Here's the skills gap. Let me spend the time to invest, and that's what somebody did with you. And now I feel like that's what I do with someone else, right? And that's how we continue to pay it on and build the toy industry and make the toy industry hopefully that much better than when we left it. So we spent some time at Hasbro. We worked on Star Wars, the Master Toy license. It continues to still be at Hasbro, the Master Toy license idea. So there were some cool projects that you worked on there. There's one in particular also kind of feeds into your current project. How about we talk a little bit about that?
Talk about the vintage collection?
Yeah, okay. I didn't want to steal your thunder, so that's why I let you.
So, we did a lot of lines together. Actually, the one I'm most proud of that you and I worked on together was Clone Wars.
Probably. I love Clone Wars line.
That was such an exciting time. But let's talk about the vintage collection, because that has become one of the most beloved lines that I think Hasbro's ever done. And it has its roots, for those who aren't familiar with it, Hasbro's vintage line pays direct homage to the original Kenner Star Wars figures that were launched in 1978. We tried to recreate that exact same packaging, the same nostalgic feeling that you had if you first experienced Star Wars when you were a kid back in the 70s. And but the line has grown and evolved in a tremendous way. And it's become an incredible vehicle line and a figure line. And now it's approaching close to 200 figures. When we worked on it, we launched it. There were some precursors in the aughts there, I think 2004, 2007, but we fully launched it together in 2010 as branded the Vintage Collection. And it lasted for 3 intense years. And then it was on hiatus, and then Hasbro relaunched it in 2018. And so they've been steadily adding to that and doing some amazing vehicle introductions, like the sail barge, that they did on HasLab. These are like the biggest Star Wars vehicle ever. So this collection is much beloved, and with 2 partners and I, we thought it was time to really celebrate that. So we set out to create the ultimate book to document all those projects from 2004 to 2019, and it's called Star Wars, the Vintage Collection Archive Edition. And so it's 368 pages, I think. It's a hardbound book. We launched it on Kickstarter. And I will be very honest with you, if you go to Kickstarter, you'll see that we promised an original delivery date of some time ago. The book is late, but it will be worth every page, because the photography in this book is outstanding. And the interviews that I conducted with designers, former designers, it really is the beating heart of this book, because
let's show that cover. It's a great cover. Some of the photography is kind of overlaid in there. That's really good. And
so that what makes that cover really interesting is that's based on the original Howard Chaykin movie poster, Star Wars movie poster, but it's entirely created with the vintage collection figures on that cover. And the book is wonderful, and really the heart of it is the designers who worked on it, who poured so much of their time and passion into working with us to deliver this. And notably Brian Parrish, the figure designer, he should be, everybody should know him as they know Mark Boudreau for working on the Millennium Falcons.
That's right.
So it's Brian Parrish, Brian Merton, and Eric Aranya did so much, of the work of this, and Steve Bono. I'd say those four guys. And on the packaging side, Dave Reeves was a total hero for this.
The star. You can see some of Dave's artwork behind me here on my own mini collection that I have still left over from some of the projects that we worked on. But so let's show the graphic of the timeline of collecting. Right. So that would feed then into why this project is so important. So we have a little timeline.
So this is a debut that we're showing to the your fangirl audience for the first time. This is a collecting timeline from the Vintage Collection Archive Edition. We did this because the history of Star Wars 3 3/4 action figures is actually it's a complex one. There have been so many lines across the years, but we wanted to really show what we're focusing on, because the history stretches all the way back to 1978. And what we're concentrating on is that little kind of bend of the curve down there, when we relaunched it in 2010. But it's amidst a stunning backdrop of amazing lines for Star Wars. And the tools that we've pulled out they actually touch. So the Vintage Collection, the figures in there actually come from a lot of these other lines. So, we made modifications to them and relaunched them in Vintage. So it was important that we oriented fans to all the different lines so they could understand the timing of it. So this is a debut.
Yeah, well, when we first started the line, speaking of the tools, first of all, I remember the incredible sculptor Venemeyer, who had his own fandom by Dave Venemeyer. Yeah, he had his own little booth at Celebration. And speaking of sculpting and designers who had their own following, but he did an incredible job with the figure sculpts and that in the end, you always need a good quality product. Whatever it is that you're talking about or trying to push, it can be wrapped and beautiful in a great package, but if the product itself, the heart of it is not good, it's garbage, doesn't matter. So, the sculpting, the designing, all of the other components, parts, and then we have a great wrapping with Dave Reeves and the art, that's the storytelling piece. And of course, then bringing back, the original nostalgia. But, what I found in the interim when we were launching the project, though, we had no new sculpts. Like we were using, figures from other parts of the line, as you mentioned. But then we got into new sculpts and new storytelling pieces. And I think I'm going to just go ahead and show some of these here. I don't know, this is, from the Clone Wars. We made a live action version. Not we, some of the designers, I just did the work, like behind the scenes. I didn't do the designing. These guys are the true stars. But, and then, we had new figure debuts and we had contests and we had, the mailaways, the original promotions where you had to send in like your UPC codes, and on the back there, like you send in one of each of these and you get, the limited edition Boba Fett,
That's great marketing.
Yeah, right. But those were also tactics of, the original line, right? So,
you're exactly right. Those were the exact same things that they did, that we just borrowed those and contemporized them. So,
yeah. Well, it's new, right? For the new generation. They've never seen it before. They had never had that benefit before.
That's right. So, but it all had the nostalgic roots. So it felt authentic. That's the important thing I think that we're talking about, is something like the Vintage Collection, which is rooted in nostalgia, needs to have that sense of, that authenticity, that actual tangible connection to the past.
Right. So you bring in, the authenticity, the original, you launch, more than likely everybody's launching with what people know, original characters like a Vader or an Obi-Wan or somebody like that from the original line. And then you bring in characters from the expanded universe, which are now no longer canon, unfortunately. I'm looking at you, Lucasfilm, because you got to bring these people back.
They're called legends
yeah. Now, expanded universe, now legends. Look at it, but they're great characters. And Bastilla Shawn.
Bastilla Shawn that's an amazing character. But there is hope. I mean, some of those legends characters have been migrating, their way into the mainline. Admiral Thrawn, that's amazing that we get Admiral Thrawn.
That's a great book series, by the way. I love that book series. I have that, and I had to make sure I had all the collector jackets, by the way. Do you see how much you've rubbed off on me, Derryl? Like, I don't want the usual Barnes and Noble's jacket. I want the one from Celebration.
You want the premium edition, exactly.
Of course, and I want it signed, edition. And I want it framed, and I want it. Knowing your audience, knowing how you can begin with authenticity and originality, but yet you have to still make it relevant for the newer consumers, the younger consumer. We always have to recruit more people into the fandom, into the line. And, some of those tactics were by expanding the character sets.
That's right.
Some of it was also bringing back the vintage line. And, but a lot of it also is storytelling. So how did you figure out how to, bring all those kinds of ideas and parts together? The team supported you in that vision, but I remember you were the ones who were like, we should do this vintage line. And we're like, what do you mean?
Kind of, I didn't figure this out until a few years into my time at Hasbro, but, I kind of always, I knew the importance of toys, but I was trying to put to words why are toys so important? Because we know that at a very early level, with the Fisher-Price toys, it may be about manipulation and spatial object things. So playing with things is good. But I finally figured out that what we were doing, kind of the world that we were swimming in, was we were making tools. Basically, a toy is a tool. It's a tool that you can put in a kid's hands for them to do something with, right? And what they usually did with it, going back to my childhood, was telling stories. Mm-hmm. And it became very important for me. There's nothing more important than facilitating that personal play, that imaginative play. It formed, part of my childhood, a very important part of who I am. And especially as, digital takes over more and more kids' lives, we've heard this endlessly. It's like that time for imaginative play is shrinking. That day part available is going down. So, I always looked at it as a personal responsibility. I want to give kids the tools so they can play and play stories that will form lifetime memories, either solo play or together play with lightsaber battles, things like that. So I looked at toys as a sacred object. It's, they're letting me into their house to, introduce them to things that empower personal storytelling. And that influenced kind of the way I thought about lines. So one very important thing of Star Wars is to make sure that, the brilliance of the original 3 3/4, I've said it, 5 times already, 3 3/4. It's the original size of those action figures that you held up, the vintage collection. It was a magical scale, chosen because the figures could interact with the vehicles. It was a rich world of play. And Star Wars at its heart is a world of figures and vehicles. The vehicles complete the storytelling. Yeah. And that's why it's such a magic scale that works. And I think other scales don't work as well. They just become figures and you lose part of the imagination. So the way I always thought about lines is complete play, right? I want to bring a line to retail that allowed kids to completely experience. I didn't want to leave out anything that would be central to them having a fully realized story for that. So that's why vehicles were always like a big part of what we did. And we would think about what characters can we do, but also what vehicles can we bring in and surround kids, with the play. And then we, right behind you is we reconceived, even in the vintage collection, we did built a giant, brand new AT-AT, that kind of blew away the old one. Same thing with the Millennium Falcon, the big Millennium Falcon.
Mine's in my box still. in the shipper box, mind you. Not even.
let Nando or Mia play with it. Or you never did you? No.
I didn't even play with it. You kidding me? Forget it. It's still in there. That's the college fund.
so kind of that's the way I always looked at it. I wanted to understand my audience and give them what they need. Sometimes that became very difficult, as you know, navigating through the management at Hasbro to get all the resources that we needed to do. But that's why it was very important that we kind of covered all those bases. And because otherwise, if you're just doing figures, they're commemorative figures, and that will inspire some imagination. Sometimes that's all kids can get as a figure or two, especially in other markets that we worked on, like South America. I always remember that, for them, their parents may only be able to buy them 1 or 2 toys a year. So you wanted them to be the best characters that they could get and be really high quality for their money. So they won't have the whole world, but at least they'll have the core that they can imagine and play stories with. So
it's always important to have, I look at fandom and I look at the journey on that scale. It's like a scale, right? From left to right. And you're at the beginning, you're just retelling the same stories that you may have seen on TV and what have you, and the figures, the toys. Those are those are your tools to be able to do that. And that's the conduit. And then, but within there's the basic piece, just for the kids, like you said, there's some value in there. There's a little bit of like, I only have pocket change, so I need to get only so much, I can only do this. But then as you scale along, you grow up, then you maybe have more pocket change, you're a little bit more into the expanded depth of storytelling. So then the product types you collect become more complex, right? And as you're an adult, then maybe you have a good job. And then you can go into, like prop replica collecting, or, you start to lifestyle out and get the more expensive pieces, the Columbia jackets that are $300 or, what have you. You can express your fandom in a way that's important to you with the tools that you have and with the income that you have. Right. And so what we're doing is on the other side in licensing or in toy development or what have you, is we're giving you those tools to be able to express your fandom and enjoy your fandom in a way that's important to you as you go along that scale of collecting or that scale of fandom, engagement. And some things are more important to you and you leave those things behind, whether, if you become more like a prop replica collector or, anyone that can afford that type of level of engagement in the fandom, then sometimes you're like, I don't want that 3 3/4 inch stuff. That's not important to me. But that's okay, because then that's still a tool for someone who's entering into collecting, entering into a fandom. That's still relevant for them. Or if you're a kid, right, that's still relevant for them. So we don't stop doing those things just because, a lot of the fans have grown up and now can afford $300 helmets. We don't do those. And so I think sometimes the fans may not always see the entire picture of why certain things continue to be created or sold versus other things.
That's right. And one of the biggest realizations I had at Hasbro was that my type of fandom that I'm interested in isn't necessarily represented by everyone else. Like, it touches on it. There's a lot of like 3 3/4 collectors, or even in G.I. Joe, like 12 inches of valid scale. But there are lots of other types of collectors out there who express their fandoms in different ways. And all you have to do is look at the success of Funko with the Pops. Right. We tried to do some of that at Hasbro with what was it called?
But a vinyl figure line.
We had that vinyl figure line that was out before that, but it never took off to the extent that they did, because they captured a cute essence that you wanted to bring home, and that's become just an unbelievable enduring industry with pretty much every character in the universe under that expression. That is a different slice of fandom. In that case, it's not about screen accuracy. It's about the essence of people's favorite characters, right, that they love. So you can abstract those things and still produce something great. I mean, that's why we wear clothes, based on our favorite things. Like I suppose I could be Batman, but I know.
Hey, if you put on a mask, no one will ever know if you're not Batman.
But at this point, I'm probably not going to be Batman. But I can still surround myself with abstractions, of the character. It doesn't have to be, the screen accurate prop replica. It doesn't have to be the action figure. It could be just abstractions. We love it. Look at Maleficent behind you.
Yeah,
in that
I
poster.
love Maleficent. Mm-hmm.
So that, 10, 15 years ago, that wouldn't even have been an expression, a cool expression, right, that existed. But now
we got a little correction on our Mighty Mugs. Thank you. Thank you for that input. Yes, they were great. And they had all kinds of vinyl expressions to them. They even started getting articulation and such, but the name was escaping us. So thank you very much for that input from the chat. But,
Thanks.
but sometimes fandom comes along with timing, right? And also, and I remember before we couldn't, we had supposedly difficulty selling female action figures. And now we have Ahsoka who people can't keep in stock, right? And sometimes the timing needs to be right for certain expressions, such as the Funko piece. Maybe we were just too far ahead with the Mighty Mugs, right? At that time. But, I think it's interesting because the timing was just right to bring it back to the vintage line. The timing was just right for that product type and this, the Venn diagram of fandom and, collecting and, pocket change and all these other kinds of things. And now you're going to tell that story again. I want to fast forward into your current project, right? So into the book itself. And what else can you tell us about that?
So about the book in general.
Yeah. And the storytelling of the vintage line and how you're bringing that story to life for everybody.
So what was important, it wasn't that we just did a book that's a pictorial history of a toy line. We wanted to, especially as the designers start to migrate away from Hasbro or get older, they might start forgetting, what they worked on. So it was really important to kind of take the opportunity now to get the memories while they're still fresh. And I also wanted to tell the story of our creation of that line, the thinking that went into that, behind it, why we made the decisions we did for a certain figure. A lot of people don't know that we sometimes had a mathematical formula almost for creating these waves. But there's also important stories like why Lucasfilm didn't want us to do the vintage collection, to begin with. And that may be a shocker for some people because it's turned out to be one of the most beloved and enduring lines. But we tell that story in the book as well. I'll flash forward for people. Lucasfilm originally did not want us to do vintage because as we were presenting vintage, it was to be an ongoing, enduring line that would last for several years.
Right.
So that's one thing. We had done prequel editions of vintage, just 5 or 6 figures at a time, very popular, very successful. But we wanted, as marketers, to monetize that, kind of on an ongoing basis. I say monetize lovingly in the best sense.
Yes. Well, this is the practicality behind the toy line, right? It's like,
that's right.
We're in a business. It is a business. It's unfortunate that we have to think about those things when we're building the toy lines, but it is something that is practical and we have masters to fulfill, right?
It is a business. It felt like we were running our own little company at times, felt very empowering in conjunction with Lucasfilm. But at the end of the day, we have to hit our, certain profit targets. Otherwise, we wouldn't have jobs anymore. They would say, you guys, you can't do your jobs. You have to be out. So it's always balancing the what we think our audience wants, kids and fans, with delivering things profitably for the company. And, we had to take everything from price increases to, cost reductions in the product all along the way to kind of make that happen. But it's important to get that story out. Anyway, to finish the Lucasfilm piece, Lucasfilm, it took us actually probably about a year to convince them that it was the right thing to do, that launching Vintage Collection wouldn't harm that brand, that very powerful, branding, that black and silver iconic branding, that we could do it in a way that pays honest tribute to it. But the agreement was, we will put that genie back in the bottle when the sales start to taper off. Like, we don't want it to wear out its welcome. It won't last too long, but we'll keep following that and check in and watch it very closely. And we did research at San Diego Comic-Con one year to address kind of the second major point of vintage, which is, we knew very quickly when we were doing vintage that we would run out of original trilogy characters to really populate the line. Like, we had done already most of the greatest ones. Now we were down to the Cantina aliens and Jabba's henchmen and stuff. And that doesn't make an amazing line. I mean, you can always still keep selling Darth Vaders, but you need that freshness. So with Lucasfilm, we said we're going to, after a couple of waves, need to introduce prequel trilogy characters into the vintage collection. And we knew there from message boards that fans never, ever, ever wanted to see a Qui-Gon Jinn or a Jar Jar Binks on a vintage card. There were some fans, this is, believe it or not, there were real things. They said, I will never accept that. It's a travesty. It shouldn't be. That black and silver should only be confined to the original line. And we know the history. You just showed a Bastilla Sean figure a few minutes ago. Not only did we introduce prequel trilogy characters that people instantly loved, they looked so good on those cards, but we went beyond and started celebrating all facets of the entire Star Wars entertainment world, books and comics and video games. And it just showed how that black and silver, it kind of unified, the whole universe for me. So it's like the most wonderful, purest, expression of that. So I wanted to make sure that we captured those kind of untold stories along the way. So they're all in the book. The reason why we created the big Millennium Falcon is in there. If people don't know that, that'll be in there. Why we went so large. And all those stories. It's a lot of behind the scenes, but it all ties back to the heart, that beating heart of the design team that really made it work, that partnered with us to do it. And I'm glad you mentioned Dave Venemeyer in sculpting too, because he touched all those, literally touched all of those, whatever he did.
I think there's a lot of blood in there too, somewhere mixed into the tools.
I think there's a lot of blood in there. But anyway, it's a loving tribute to what I think is one of the greatest toy lines, but it has not the easiest path to get to retail. And certainly it's endured some some rough times with sales coming down and things like that over the years. But
everything has its peaks and valleys. Everything, there's a high and a low to mostly everything, and then that's when you have to reinvent again. I mean, that's right. The nature of longevity in the toy industry. I mean, or in any industry, really. I mean, regardless of if you're in fashion, high level fashion, or if you're, doing toys, you have to constantly reinvent what it is to be your brand or what it is to be your product, because if not, your consumer base will grow up with you, but then you'll have no one else to replace, right? You have to constantly recruit more people into the brand or into your franchise or your product category or whatever it is. I mean, quite frankly, from the business side, to sell more products. You will only sell so many to the same people all the time. There's a limited budget there, right? But from a longevity standpoint, then there's multi-generations. That's why Star Wars and Transformers and G.I. Joe and all these other really long franchises, that are granddaddies in the licensing industry, because they've been able to reinvent, there's something for each generation to latch onto. So, and sometimes it's the previous generation, maybe it's the vintage line again. But, to your point, like prequels, everybody talks, garbage about the prequels, but there's love there for them. Not
anymore, because I've always liked the prequels.
I did too. Yeah.
I mean, there are things I don't love, but I think pod racing is one of the greatest scenes. It's like so Star Wars. I mean, we'll see if the chat blows up. No, it's not. But I do like the prequels. There's some dubious elements to them that but the heart of it is a great story. And Obi-Wan, like, I used to love Luke Skywalker as my favorite character, but the story that George and the team told with Obi-Wan through the prequels,
that heart-wrenching story,
is the most amazing. He's one of the most beloved characters that I could, ever imagine. So I'm very thankful for that, as well as so many other things. But today's fans growing up, and I hear this time and time again, is today's new fans, like the new blood that's coming in, they grew up on the prequels. They said, that's what I love. And, I don't know why.
That's their Star Wars.
The old curmudgeonly generation doesn't love them or whatever, but that's their Star Wars. And everybody, it's really funny too. I was talking to somebody about another line. So before you came to Hasbro in the early 2000s, I and the rest of the team, we relaunched G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe versus Cobra line. And I'll be honest, we made a lot of mistakes. Those were not, the greatest years in terms of world-class product. There was, however, some very good storytelling, I think, that came out of that time. And today we're finding the resurgent interest in G.I. Joe collecting, like the 3 3/4 collecting.
Yeah.
It's being infused by the kids who grew up during that time period. And you might say, ooh, that was a rough thing for you to have as a kid, but to them, they enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
They liked reading the little stories we packed in the comics and watching Spy Troops on Cartoon Network and things and that influenced their affinity for G.I. Joe. So you can never, the other thing I realized is you can never overlook or discount someone's genuine connection to a subject matter, because it influenced their life at the right time, at the right age. It facilitated, hopefully, storytelling that made it a rich thing that they love, that later in life, following a 20-year rule, right? 20 years after you had something as a kid, maybe the adult world, the working world isn't as fun, but you can nostalgically think back to the things that made you happy as a child, that filled your childhood. And then that kind of is what triggers the collecting, bug. And a lot of people or the collecting gene turns on. Suddenly the mRNA is unmasked, or whatever it is that does it, right?
Yeah.
But usually it's people who are who are like done with school, they're working, they're kind of thinking back to what things fulfill them and make them happy, and they have means because they're working, hopefully.
Exactly.
Everybody's working. And and then they can pour their money, that extra money, into the things that they love. So it's usually, the new generation that comes is about 20 years after the original, and that's another reason why we're seeing, Pokemon and Magic cards just reach unprecedented levels of interest in those past cards, is because now we've passed that 20-year milestone. We're into, 25, 27 years on these things. And the generations are just piling on top of each other, with interest in that. And that's one thing that Star Wars has had going for it for so many years. It's the continual new entertainment that Lucasfilm has put out. It's one of those rare brands that has that, just continues to create future generations of fans with, great new storytelling.
Well, we had the original trilogy, we had the prequels, we had some video games thrown in there in the middle. We had Clone Wars, my personal favorite.
I love it.
Everyone asks me, what is your favorite Star Wars anything? And I always say Clone Wars. I love the animation. I love the characters and storytelling, but really I loved that it expanded the world for me. It expanded all the Jedi, it expanded all of their stories, expanded the clones and all their various factions and their ways, their ways to express themselves when they were all the same. Like, that was incredible to me. So
absolutely,
Clone Wars is my favorite anything. Then we have, Rebels, and then we have, Resistance, and on and on and on the new trilogy. So, I think it'll be interesting to see 20 years from now, where you and I will sit maybe on another live stream and see, where is everything from there? Yeah, hopefully with a nice little umbrella cocktail, and where we'll be collecting, where will be the toy industry. You're already part of the historian group now, right? And who knows if I'll be in there. I'm not sure if I'm going to be writing books, but I'll call upon you to help me write those books.
That sounds good. Yeah, hopefully. So, yeah, I this is my second book now. My first book actually was a G.I. Joe 12-inch book published prior to my joining Hasbro. I love it. I couldn't do anything while I worked at Hasbro, so that's why there was a period, not for lack of trying, by the way. Hasbro Legal said, no, you can't. You can't write books. If you did, you just have to give them to us, and then we could publish them. So I was my hands were tied.
Yeah.
But now, now that I'm free to write, it's like this is what I love doing is trying to just put a story together for the things that are most beloved. So,
well, you know a lot about a lot of things in the toy industry. So you should write probably a lot of more books around other brands and franchises, because I'm sure you could educate a lot of us on those as well, even if we think we know them.
yeah.
So like we said in the beginning, it's going to go fast. We're already winding down. I can't believe it. I know.
We're just chatting.
I know. That's all. That's how it goes.
We're just catching up, Anita.
And everybody else is along for the ride. So where can we find the book that you're working on currently? Where can we find you and other information? And how can we find your old book too?
Sure. Well, the old book is it's called The Collectible G.I. Joe. It's long out of print. Hopefully there's another G.I. Joe book in the future there, but the only way you can get that is really on Amazon. But if people send it to me, I'll autograph it, so I will do that. The new book, the Vintage Collection Archive Edition, will be coming to us in May. So we're in the final edits right now in the production stage, and we'll have it in hand in May and ship out to everybody. It's pre-orders are still up at our website is Bluemilk. It's Blue, BLUEMI.LK. So
don't forget the dot.
Yeah, don't forget that dot. So bluemilk.lk, and you can go check it out. We've got some sample pages up, and we'll add the collecting timeline that we debuted here to that, so people can see that and get a sample of it. It's an amazing book, and hopefully more things are to come too. So we've been working on it for a long time. So I personally don't do a lot on social media, so occasionally I'll do a Facebook post, but generally I consume more than I go on and engage in anything. So,
But are there social pages for Bluemilk?
Yeah, so you can find Bluemilk on all of the relevant platforms. So it'll be on Instagram, Facebook and things like that. So
awesome.
So you'll see updates as they come out, but Bluemilk will have everything. So bluemi.lk.
That's right. So there's video there. There's a way to figure out how to pre-order it. There's opportunity to follow along on social media. Yep. And, there's also the replay. So if your friends didn't catch this great live stream right now, there's going to be a replay up on our YouTube channel from next week. We will clean it up and we will probably take out all the frozen moments. So apologize for the internet lags if there's any, guys. But, we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate you, following along. Thank you, Derryl, for doing this with me. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for all of your mentorship, your time, your energy, and your passion, which you did infect me with. And I just try to do justice with that every day. So I appreciate your time and investment in me. And you have set my feet on a path that there's no going back from. And hopefully, we string some other people along with us. So I do appreciate that.
Oh, I'm tearing up. Oh, it's my pleasure.
That's fine. Well, I appreciate it. And I'm sure there's other people who feel the exact same way. So thank you guys again for following along on Fangirl Friday Live. Fangirl Friday every week. We'll be back next week with another great installment. And, follow us along on YouTube and Instagram and on Facebook. See you later. Thanks, everybody.